Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon. Welcome to Loon Mountain and the celebration of Jeff Ingalls. So glad that you guys could make it from near and from far to celebrate a man who meant a lot. As we said at the graveside, he meant a lot to his family, meant a lot to his community. The community involved Loon Mountain here. As you can see, the bombardier over there, a cat that Jeff drove often, in our town, and also obviously our nation, our country, and around the world. So we pause today to celebrate Jeff, and I think this is a little bit more Jeff's style. He would be happy that you are all here at Loon, a place that he loved. One of the things I'm bummed about is I wanted to ski more with Jeff. A lot of my preaching has to do about skiing, and halfway through last winter, he decided, all right, Marcus, I need you to come with me, and I'm going to buy some boots and some skis. And we went into Rogers Discount, and he goes, skis are shaped like this now? I said, yes, Jeff. Yes, they are. And then he picked the boot up off the shelf and almost put it through the ceiling. These things are light. I said, yes, they are. How long has it been since you skied? And so we're really, really glad. The God that Jeff and I serve and the God that Jeff and I believe in is not a God who, contrary to popular opinion, is boring, is driven by rules, is housed in some building somewhere, or just limited to some book or some denomination. We believe in a God who's much bigger than that, and a God who is much more creative than that. And so we believe in a God who invented drink, and a God who invented meals and laughter. And so, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to pray after the meal here. You're all right. I know. Your grandma's not happy with you that you ate before I prayed. But I'm going to pray right now. God, and I don't close my eyes when praying. Yes, you did invent CB. God, you are good. And we thank you so much for this group. We thank you so much for the gift of Jeff. We thank you for the gift of laughter and drink and food. We thank you for the gift of snow and mountains and gravity, fiberglass, metal edges, diesel fuel, friolators, live music, and lifts. We love you, God, and we thank you for your many, many gifts. Today, Lord, give us strength and courage as we honor a man who was faithful and good, who was strong, courageous, and resilient. Give us strength to be like him. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, we have a long line of speakers, so I don't want to take it up, but my name is Marcus, and I'm the chaplain here at Loon Mountain, and it's about 3 years ago, under rough circumstances, that Jeff and I became really acquainted. There's an author named C.S. Lewis that calls God the great hound of heaven, and that when God gets a sniff of you, he's coming after you. God was really familiar with Jeff, but about 3 years ago, God dialed up the temperature, and he was coming after Jeff. And I was fortunate to be a part of that process. And boy, am I very thankful and humbled that I get to be part of Jeff's journey the last 3 years. And I'm very humbled and thankful that Nancy ain't going nowhere, and you're part of our story for the rest. So we are really, really thankful for that. And I said at the graveside, and I meant it, Jeff really encouraged me as a young minister. And as a young minister, my dad was a pastor, and everyone always told me, oh, you'll be a pastor someday. You'll be a pastor. And I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. Growing up, see, pastors, they just facilitated meetings where people argued over carpet color. I didn't want to be a pastor. And then one day my friends at Sugarloaf said, you could be a ski resort chaplain. And I thought to myself, ski resort church. All they want is white carpet. I can deal with that. We all pray for snow at our church. I know Brian from Florida, that would be hard for you. I don't know where you are, but that'd be hard for you. But when Jeff chose to come to our church, and Jeff chose to call me his minister, his pastor, that was humbling, nerve-wracking. When a man of Jeff's stature walks into your office and says, Pastor, can you help me with, or Pastor, I have questions about, and I looked into his eyes and said, boy, you could tell me a lot more than I could ever tell you. But together we journeyed, and I grew, and he grew in his faith, and it was pretty incredible to watch Jeff over the last 3 years. So my name's Marcus. I'm the chaplain here at Loon Mountain. I feel very fortunate to do this. And I'm really glad to meet a bunch of Jeff's comrades, a bunch of Jeff's former bosses, his family, his friends. I'm really, really, really blessed to do this. So first I would like to introduce Commander Buzz. Commander was the commander of the UTC-1. And so Commander Buzz, if you would come, and oh man, I bet you got stories with laughs all day long, but if you would come, Commander Buzz, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. The UCT is just truly a family, very close family. I was Jeff's CO for 2 short years and had the honor to re-enlist him during that time. He was first class at the time. And I've been friends with him ever since for the last 36 years. Celebration of life. It's just a wonderful opportunity to say goodbye to good friends, good friend, those we work with, those we love. It wasn't too many years ago that funerals were solemn affairs, everybody wearing black and mourning faces and lots of tears, and listening to a rather boring sermon that we didn't listen to today. But those, those days are past, and this is just a great opportunity for that. We are here to mourn Jeff's passing, but we're also here to celebrate all the good things and some of the bad things that we shared with Jeff over the years. Many of us in this room share the sad memories of 1985 TWA 847 events that led to the brutal death of one of our shipmates, and his brother Ken is here today, and captivity of 5 others. Those fateful events pulled many of us much closer together. Those that were there, like Stuart Dahl and Tony Watson, and Ken Bowen, and Clinton Suggs, God rest his soul. Their lives were indelibly changed, and those memories don't really go away. But Jeff told me once, it really hurts to pull the scab off. But be that as it may, we are here. We need to remember. We need to remember, and we'll never forget. After I left the team in 1986, I went to work for a command in Washington, where I came to manage and execute a special project cable landing on a foreign shore. As many of the CBs in this room have experienced, this type of operation takes an entire UCT deck, plus plenty of help from our friends at CHESDIV, or whatever they call themselves today. But for this project, none of that was possible. I picked Jeff to assist me, and 2 of us went out and we planned the project. We prepared the site. We landed the 2 cables, and then restored the site afterwards. So just the 2 of us, except we did have some help from a excavator operator, local excavator operator that we hired. What possibly could have gone wrong? Well, the job started off a little shaky. I had to negotiate with a local heroin operator dealer to move his office, which was his Mercedes, down the beach a bit because we had to dig a trench through his place of business. Jeff, he had to figure out how to dig a trench through a reinforced concrete bunker that wasn't on the drawings and wasn't obvious from a site inspection. Well, we got through all that, and so now it's the first day of the cable landing. I was on the beach. I was the beach master. Jeff was in the compound directing the excavator operator who was going to pull the cable in. We didn't have line of sight, so everything was by radio. So we're halfway through the cable pull. The 12 o'clock church bells went off, and then all of a sudden, the cable on the beach started to violently jump up and down. So I got on the radio and said, "Jack, WTF?"
And as only Jeff could do, he said, very calmly, he said, I'll have the situation under control in a minute, sir. Just be calm. So turned out 12 o'clock church bells signaled to our excavator operator that it was pub time, and probably the rest of the half of the town probably was heading for the pub. So he turned his excavator 90 degrees and started to head for the pub, even though there was in a walled compound. It didn't matter. So the cable was under a lot of tension, under a whole lot of tension, because they didn't want to use divers or cable floats, and we had to drag this thing across the bottom. And boy, it was just thumping on those excavator grousers. Well, Jeff jumped into the cab, pulled the guy out, and got the situation under control, and no harm was done. But we did have to watch this guy for the next day and a half, because in fact, we kidnapped him, and we didn't let him go home that night. After we both got out of the Navy, our paths crossed several times when Jeff was working for Caldwell Marine and later International Telecom. I was working for Oceaneering and 3U Technologies. We kept up by social media over the years, and Nancy and Jeff hosted Diana and I at their house a few summers ago, and remember we went out looking for moose that night. We didn't find any, but we... Last summer was the last time I saw Jeff, as with many of you, during our fishing excursion in Alaska. We call that UCT Det Alaska 2019. So many good memories from that trip. Now it's time to say goodbye to an old friend. Always remember Jeff as being among the very best. In the tradition of the Navy, I salute you, Master Chief Ingalls, and I wish you fair winds of the following seas.
Thank you, Commander Buzz. There is nothing that bonds someone in a shared common experience. That is why when we are in Boy Scouts or we're with young kids, we take them on a hike trip or a bike trip or a canoe trip. It's a shared common experience. And sometimes on those canoe trips it gets difficult. It rains or it's too shallow and you have to haul your canoe over rocks. The more difficult the trip, the stronger the bond. And as a minister and talking to Jeff when he was laid up on the couch after falling off the roof, when I could get a word in edgewise through Tucker, who was their beagle who never stops talking, once in a while Jeff and I would talk and we'd get lost in conversation, and young 36-year-old minister, I'd be right listening, and then all of a sudden Jeff would drift off somewhere. His eyes would get distant. He'd look kind of over your shoulder, and I bet you anything he'd be going back to 1985. And so his brother Ken is going to come and share a little bit more about leadership and what's that like. But Ken's not alone here as the survivors. Stuart and Tony, would you please stand up? And let's give Stuart, Tony, and Ken a round of applause as survivors. Thank you. And Ken, if you would come and speak, please.
You guys are going to really have to bear with me on this. I wrote everything down because I didn't want to try to miss something. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, I sat down and I wrote this little letter, and it's the man, Jeffrey J. Ingalls. I said, I first met Jeff when I reported to Underwater Construction Team 1 in the summer of 1983. I was a very young 21-year-old steelworker, third-class petty officer. I was one of the youngest and lowest ranked members at the time. I was eager to find acceptance with a group of star performers, and I was surrounded by professionals within one of the smallest and elite units and communities in the naval service. I say that with confidence because of the simple math and the path to get there. In the United States, there's anywhere from 1.3 to 1.4 million service members serving in our armed forces, basically 0.4% of our population. 1.7% of these serve in the Navy, approximately 337,000 active duty and 101,000 active reservists, rated reserve. Out of this, there are 7,000 active duty personnel, 6,900 rated reservists who serve in the United States Navy Seabees. Out of these Seabees, there are 2 underwater construction teams. Each team has approximately 75 members. Today the numbers are growing, but the day that I walked through the door, and Jeff Ingalls was there were 35 members at each team. A very select club, to say the least. The teams make up approximately 2% of the Seabees, 0.04% of the Navy, and 0.01% of the military service. I said this to give you a glimpse into the very small numbers in a very special community within a big picture of naval service. The small community, however, is tasked with a wide variety of assignments to support waterfront and underwater construction operations throughout the globe. Project as simple as pile and pier inspection and repair, to deep water pipeline installations and cable lays. We were CB divers. So I, as the young boot of the bunch, knew enough to look up to these star performers and learned all I could from them. I could mention several names from that time, but the man Jeff Ingalls was the one that I quickly became someone that I looked up to. Jeff had a way of giving you a hard time, razz you in fun, look at you with his Cheshire cat grin, teach you and show you an easier way. He also was a listener who would allow you to express your ideas and think outside of the box. I looked up to Jeff as a leader and in many ways as an older brother. Being a leader is not something all have been blessed to do. Being a good leader is a special trait that is exhibited by doing. By being a doer, the people that you lead gain confidence and want to follow you by the example set. Jeff was that type of a leader. As he moved up the ladder to chief, senior chief, master chief, he also became one of the team's master divers, one of 2. He ultimately became the senior enlisted person to achieve command master chief, again, one of 2, one at each team during those times. They've changed a little bit now, but it used to be very hard. Jeff never held a grudge with anyone through his years. I don't know anyone that has any negative words, but quite the contrary. I hear words like mentor, helper, kind, hard worker, role model, someone to emulate, and hero. Though Jeff's walk was remarkably exemplary, he did it all while fighting many internal demons. In June of 1985, while assigned, Jeff and 5 other team members, including myself, were returning home from when our aircraft was taken over by radical Islamic terrorists of the group Hezbollah. During that incident, one of our teammates, Steelworker Second Class Robert Steedham, was brutally beaten and executed. Our team was separated and held captive for 17 days in Beirut, Lebanon. Jeff was separated and held apart with 2 other hostages. The incident had our lives in peril for the duration. all of that we went through, we carry the invisible wounds of that ordeal. The death of our teammate and enduring the helplessness we had to assist him when he needed it most has forever seared our souls. Although this incident did change us all, it gave us a desire to carry on. He pressed on to persevere. Jeff did not speak of the incident much, only if he thought it would help someone to understand. He used it as a teaching point. He quietly continued in his service. After Jeff retired from the underwater construction teams, he moved back to his childhood mountain community he had left far away for 20 years. At home, Jeff wasn't happy to sit idle. He wasn't happy to sit idle at the teams either. He began volunteering with his community. He did outreach with CV Veterans of America. He worked with Veterans to Veterans, V2VG, and was inspired to start his own group, Vets Rest Stop, Inc., to reach out to veterans suffering from PTSD returning home to themselves. Jeff reached out, and his being a mentor never stopped. Even though Jeffrey J. Ingalls has passed away from this earthly realm and into a heavenly one, his teaching and leading continue on through those he inspired. We have suffered a loss, a great loss. To some, a teammate, a brother, a friend. To one, a son. To two sons, a father. And to the one who knew him best, a husband. I can say with certainty, Jeff did all he could do within his reach of influence to make this world a better place. Jeff's life is one of example we can all learn something from. So I leave with you this poem by an unknown author entitled The Measure of a Man. The measure of the man. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his station, but had he a heart? How did he play his God-given part? Was he ever ready with a good word of cheer? To bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not what was his church, not what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? Not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry when he passed away? These are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. I can honestly say I will miss this man like a brother. But we will carry on as he would have us to do until that appointed time when we will meet again in glory. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Ken. While we sit in a free country, in a free state, can we need stories like that? We're prone to complain about heat under a tent. We're prone to complain about wearing fabric on our face. We're prone to get angry about traffic on the way here. And when we hear stories like that, we remember that freedom is not free. Right now, there are countries that cannot meet like this. Right now, there are states that cannot meet like this. We are thankful. And we are thankful for the men and women who have served and fought near and far to preserve that freedom. So I'd ask if you take your glass and let's give 3 cheers to the men and women that have fought for our freedom. Hip, hip, hooray. Hip, hip, hooray. Hip, hip, hooray. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Tony. Next, I'd like to welcome Navy Seabee Veteran of America Vice Commander Doug Bauer. Please.
Good afternoon to one and all. I am not part of Jeff's part of his team, but what I am is a Seabee. I did 26 years. I've been in 28 different countries. I've had some good duty. I've had some not so good. I have ate food that you wouldn't even want to eat or even want to share. But what I can say to you today, and for apparently, and for which, like I say, I'm sorry, but I was not part of the Just team. But what I would like to say is the fact that during his time of when he and his team had been captured, must have been the reason why the Navy wanted to do something completely different in Pearl Harbor, which called on me to take a team, for which I was the only one, from the East Coast, and I met up with a bunch of people from the West Coast. There was only 6 of us, and primarily the fact what we were going to do, and for which we were met at the airport in San Francisco, California. And there was a person who was going to meet us and who asked us for our ID card. We gave it to him. He handed us a new ID card. This was an orange one. This had the semblance of the fact of what we were going to be involving in. As I say, we had a sheet of paper we had to memorize. We had a cell phone. We had a set of car keys, each of us. The person left and told us he would see us tomorrow and read the paper and find out where we had to go. We were going to go to Pearl Harbor, and primarily our mission was going to be testing all 4 branches, or if not even 5 branches, of all the military, and basically trying to see as to how well we can sneak in, sneak out, how we can pick locks, how we can take people captive, and how we can get away with it. Basically, it was a game of chess, is all I can say and how I can relate to it. And I'll tell you, once we entered a room, all we had to do is show our ID card, because apparently all of Pearl Harbor was all notified of what was going to be coming down. They had no idea as to the time or date. They didn't even know as to who and how many were going to be coming. So by this token, once we entered a room, and whatever we did, we would stage up street situations. We would make up an accident, basically, so that we could get the rest of our team around the corner so that we would draw the people to go to the accident so that we can sneak around. We took the Commodore of the Navy, he and his wife and his daughter, captive. Anybody who we came in contact with and who we all met in a room or met on a street to do whatever we wanted to do, they were our captive. Think about it, people. These guys, not the same situation. With that being said, we met a couple people coming across a grinder is what we call, which is basically a parking lot. They had no idea who we were. They didn't ask for our ID, nor did we ask them. All we knew that this looked like prime bait as to what we could get some information out of. And all we did is just waited for them to approach us. We asked them, who was in charge of all of this Pearl Harbor situation? Do you know, by the drop of a coin, they said, oh, you're talking about Admiral so-and-so. Oh, well, where does he live? Is he a pretty decent guy? Is he good? Is he bad? Is he whatever? Oh, he lives up on such and such a street. Oh, okay. And after our conversation with him and getting all this information, myself and my radio men, we were on our phones as soon as they left to notify the rest of the team. We drove to the Admiral's house, 4-star. We sat in his bushes almost all night long, waiting for him to show up, walking out the door with his little briefcase. Once he came out, we popped out of the freaking bushes like rabbits and showed him our ID card. He knew exactly what was happening. He was now captive under our domain. So the game was primarily over with. My point is this, and that is that we had a good time, but the thing is that I know what it's like on the other side of the coin, of when somebody is trying to stage something out on a flight or wherever on a city street, over in Beirut, Afghanistan, wherever it may be. And like I say, I've been in 28 different countries. I have been on both sides of the world, and as soon as I retired, only hours after when I retired, I went back into another war zone, which was Bosnia and Croatia, being in the inspector for the Army. And after when I completed that, I was asked to go to work for King Fayyad's in Saudi Arabia's National Guard as a project manager and as well as an inspector. I did 4.5 more years overseas, besides all my other years too. My career goes from to the idea of that I was in the CVs of many battalions, and at the end, and because I wanted to take the initiative, and like Jeff was, some of us are hard-headed. We just want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I was pushing myself. I went to get my certification as a master builder, and then I went and got my certification as a planning and estimator and scheduler, and that's what I did for the next 25 years. I loved my career, but now I love what I'm doing as well. The point is that we all thank our military, but I am very proud of the Seabees. I really am. So with that, I didn't even go off my notes, but the idea is that some of it, and for which, being the National Vice Commander for all of the Seabees, I am responsible for 88 islands across the country. We have 3,230 members, and Master Chief Jeff Ingalls was one of our members. I am very proud to have him. We were going to have a change of command ceremony in Colorado Springs next week, but because of this virus, we had to cancel everything, and it's now postponed in order for me to go to the National Commander position. I really want to take this NSVA to a much more enhanced situation. I want to be out there. I want to get to meet some of these people and share our stories, to see some people and share whatever we can share before we are non-existent. Because many of our members are passing away, especially with this COVID virus that's going on. As already from March to this date, as I had just checked before I came here, we have lost 262 CB veterans, which is it's hard. It's hard to accept it, but it's because of the virus, and many of it is because of the fact of the age itself. With that, I have also a poem, and then I have another situation I want to read to you, and it's very, very short, so not to take up your time. And the poem goes like this, and it's classified as I'm free. And it starts off as, don't grieve for me, now I'm free. I follow the path God has led, you see. I took his hand when I heard him call, and I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work, to play. Tasks left undone must stay that way. I found that peace at the close of day. In my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy. Their friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Oh yes, these things too I will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now by undue grief. Lift up your heart and peace to thee. God wanted me now. He set me free. Lastly, and some of you may know this and some of you may not, but it's to the remembrance of the fact of what there is a meeting when we go to a gravesite. There is a meeting when we might see a coin. Let me read it to you. A coin is left on the headstone or at the gravesite is meant as a message to the deceased veteran's family that someone else has visited the grave to pay respect. Leaving a penny at the grave means simply that you visited. A nickel indicates that you and the deceased trained at boot camp or some other training together. While a dime means you served with him or her in some capacity. By leaving a quarter at the gravesite, you are telling the family that you were with the veteran when he was killed. No matter what the original intentions of the coin, leave or be, it seems clear that a coin left on a headstone is a symbol of remembrance and respect. A coin well telling of who passes by that the person buried there was loved and visited often. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Vice Commander. Before I announce the next speaker, I'd like to give you guys a chance to process. After the next speaker, there's going to be some open mic time. Now, you are primarily all from New England, so my guess you getting up here and speaking is nil to none. But I know you have big voices, and we're under a tent, so if you have a story about Jeff, I know I'm a minister, but it's okay if it's not appropriate. We're at a ski resort. And if you have a story to share about Jeff, we would love to hear that after our next presenter. And then after a little while, we'll move on in presentation. Story is powerful. Story is very, very powerful. And story is such a beautiful way in the healing process. So stories should not stop this afternoon. They should go on tonight, tomorrow, next month, next year, and continue on. Story is very, very powerful. But next I'd like to introduce State of New Hampshire House Representative. It's fitting that Jeff is from the state of New Hampshire, live free or die, and the Granite State. Jeff is as tough as granite. But Jerry Stringham, would you please come forward and present Nancy with the flag of New Hampshire State that was flown over the State House. Jerry.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Always tough to follow you. Yeah, I am here as representative of the New Hampshire House of Representatives to honor and thank the service of Jeff Ingalls and also as friends of Jeff and Nancy through church. On behalf of the Speaker of the New Hampshire House, I am proud to present Nancy and her family with this flag that was flown over the state capitol on July 27th. Also, you can go ahead and take it out here. Also with the flag, bring this declaration that provides the circumstances of when it was flown and in whose honor it is. Nancy mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago that she thought this would be a great item for her children. And, you know, in the state of New Hampshire, we honor our veterans so much. We're so grateful for all they do for our freedom. And despite COVID, there was great activity to get this flag flown and get this declaration available for Nancy and her family. So I'm really proud to bring it here. But aside from that, you know, reading and hearing all the details of Jeff's record, the Speaker of the House put forward this declaration, which will be read on the floor of the House of Representatives at the next available session. We know most of the story very, very well, but I'll just say, declared that the New Hampshire House of Representatives grants its highest praise and accolades to the Master Chief Jeff Ingalls and extends its thanks for his service to New Hampshire and to the country, and be further declared by virtue of my signature below, the expressions of the House heartfelt sympathy be committed to Master Chef Ingalls' family and loved ones through this declaration dated July 27, 2020. So thank you, and condolences to all of you.
Thank you, Jerry. That was really meaningful. Who do I have that will break the ice from your table? Stand up and with a big voice tell us a Jeff Ingalls story. I heard someone back there. Were they being voluntold? Someone's being voluntold. I can see it over there. One more drink and they're going to get stand up. All right, yep. Scott Bartlett has one. Thank you, Scott.
Well, this is less of a Jeff Ingalls thing. It's more of a Nancy and the boys thing. And this just cracked me up back when it happened. Well, back years ago, Brendan and Keegan, I took piano lessons from my daughter, Brooke. And each of the boys took their lesson one at a time. And in the meantime, they would go out and play with my son, Sky. And they would have a ball, being boys, go out and play. Then the next boy would have their piano lesson. Then that boy would go out and have a ball with my son, Sky. And so it was all over. We were at the doorway. Brendan and Keegan were there. Nancy was there. My daughter Brooke was there, my wife. And they were ready to leave. And Nancy says, "Okay, boys, what do you say?" And they turned to Sky. "Thanks a lot." And she said, "No, say thank you to Brooke for the lesson." So that just cracked me up. So I think that's something Jeff would have done. He would, yeah. More fun in the woods than having piano lessons. So that was funny.
Thank you, Scott. Another one. What was one going on back there? Go share. You can't leave us hanging. Stand right up where you are and share it.
I just want to add to, thanks, Ken, for that touching speech. It really means a lot for people to hear. And for us that I've recently retired, for the guys that are on active duty, it's not so much what Jeff and his brothers went through, it's how they went through it. And it meant a lot to us.
Yeah. Yes, Donna, you can share. We'll.
Years and years ago, some man was getting married to Tammy, and I was maid of honor at the wedding. And Jeff Ingalls and his wife were there. He went to the meeting. There, downhill. I took him up to me, John, you want a beer? Jeff, you want a beer? John, you want a beer? Jeff, you want a beer? Sure. You know, so we went on to meeting. All of a sudden, me and Jeff was naked in the pond. He's back, folks,
Is that what? That's awesome, Donna. Donna, is that what you call? Is that what you call see my bee diving? It's a see my bee diving.
Oh, jeez.
That's awesome. Thanks, Donna. Oh man, that was good. All right, anyone else? Anyone from the Loon team? Well, there's some good Loon stories, I'm sure. Oh, we got one. Come on up. Were you his math teacher? Oh boy, this is going to be good.
Actually, if we go back, I was the advisor to the class in 1978. I had only been there 6 years. I pulled out that yearbook, and oh my goodness sakes. But that's not what I want to tell stories about. Because you see, back in 1978, Jeff was already vice president and president of his class. And that was a super, super class because he didn't tell them what to do. They all worked together, and it was wonderful. Now, we have stayed in touch, and many times I've been out to the log cabin, we've sat and we talked, and it was just a marvelous, marvelous time. Yes, I'm 80 years old, and I'll tell you, these kids keep me alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, stories should not end here. Stories should go on. And I'm sure maybe there's some stories that are more appropriately shared around a table or around a campfire tonight. But I'd like to invite Chuck up, please. Chuck is from V2VG, correct, Chuck? And he's the vice president. And Chuck has something to share.
I know we're all having a great time, right? Yeah, crickets. Well, first, one of the things I loved most about Jeff was the fact that he really appreciated military jokes. So with that, I'll start with, why do the Navy put their names on their pants? The answer is, so Marines know where their girlfriends are. See, now that's what Jeff would have wanted, right there. Thank you all. So who were the sailors that were that ended at the funeral that did hoo-ah, Master Chief? Raise your hands if you were that group of guys. You're all seamen. I just want to say a big fat screw you to all of you, and I'll tell you why. Jeff was all about preparation, and Eric, who's our president, who's an Army Iraqi veteran, and I'm an Iraqi veteran from the Marines, were very prepared for TAPS in the 21-gun salute. And we're all like, yay, we made it without shedding a tear. And then you jerks, all of yous, it broke us. It broke both of us. And I just wanted to say, it meant, even though we're not part of the Navy, not part of the Seabees, hearing that and seeing that with that group of guys was just so amazing. And it touched us in a way, I think, that was more special than TAPS or the 21-gun salute. So what I'm going to read here is a handwritten letter from our now retired therapist, and actually how Jeff and I had met. We were both seeing her individually for PTSD, and along with some other guys, and she wanted to get us together so that we could learn from each other, and she created this group. So with Jeff not being here, he can't yell at her for saying the stuff, and with her being retired, she can't get in trouble from work. So I will do my very best to read this clearly. Forgive me because I am a Marine and I don't know how to read that well. See, I can make fun of Marines just as easy as sailors. I got it. Okay, so her name was she's still alive, Liz Fleming. She starts, when I think of Jeff, many feelings come up. First of all, I miss him. We all do. But thoughts of Jeff make me happy and inspired. I'm happy thinking about who Jeff was as a person and inspired for the same reason. Jeff experienced trauma, came back, and worked to overcome it. That has to be respected. It would be impossible for me to mention everything about Jeff that was admirable. See, again, I can't read that well. Admirable. But I'd like to touch on just a few of his qualities. First, God. Jeff was a person who lived his faith. He didn't just walk out the church on Sunday and then start going drinking and getting into trouble over the week and ask for forgiveness on Sunday. Second, family. Jeff loved and was committed to his family. When Jeff spoke about his wife, sons, and his mother, and even his dog, his voice was full of caringness. And not so much when he spoke about his sons, because he was a mentor to me on that. I complained about my children a lot with the age difference. And I have to say, and I told Brendan this to his face last week or so, over the last year, the person Jeff praised the most in his personal growth was Brendan. He was getting to a point where he felt like he was going crazy. He was being impatient. He was being angry at, seemed to be everything. And he'd always go to Brendan and say, am I being irrational here? So for everybody else to know the type of person Jeff was, to go to his own son and ask for that guidance, really says a lot about him. And Brendan, I'm so grateful to have met you and be able to tell you that in person. Okay, community. Jeff had an interesting and, something military experience. He was left with his physical and emotional impact of the trauma. I wanted him to work to overcome that trauma, and he did. He moved forward. It was gratifying to watch. Jeff was committed to helping others. His steady presence helped everyone. This is handwritten, so I'm really not this bad at reading, so please forgive me. Jeff was always enthusiastic about starting a nonprofit, which is amazing because we bounced ideas off of each other at the same time. And Jeff's nonprofit, anybody here who is on the board of Veterans Rest Stop, please raise your hand. All right, look around. Look at this is Jeff's legacy. This is his group right here. All right, and the Islands X4, raise your hand. This is the group he was directly part of. And he would go and complain about his wife and his kids, just like these guys did. And although he was not a board member of our group, he donated so much experience. He sent people our way, veterans and first responders. He donated money. And I am so excited to continue growing with the Islands and with Veterans Rest Stops to turn what his dream is into reality, and for his children and grandchildren and his wife and his mother to be able to witness it happening. This is a great opportunity. With that, I'll end with one more joke. Does anybody know what Army stands for? Aren't really Marines yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. That was good. All right, next up, local railroadman Ben Clark, friend, family, and community member. Ben?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Marcus. My name is Benjamin Clark, and like many of you, I had the pleasure of knowing and working with Jeff Ingalls for many years. I'd like to take this opportunity to just share a few words about him as we celebrate his legacy today. Jeffrey J. Ingalls was born on October 1st, 1960. He was the son of John B. Ingalls and Priscilla Colley Ingalls. With his fiery red hair, fair complexion, and a propensity to blush when he was nervous or excited, he soon earned the nickname Pinky. At least that's what they used to call him when I was a kid. Jeff grew up here in Woodstock and was a graduate of the Linwood class of 1978. At the age of 17, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, where he spent the next 20 years, and he reached the rank of Master Chief, E9. He left Woodstock as a boy, and by the time he returned, the military had made him a man. Jeff's military service was long and varied. He was a master diver and a Navy Seabee. His list of military accolades reads like an entry from Webster's Encyclopedia. Virtually everything from A to Z was covered, including special recognition from President Reagan after being held captive for 17 days by the terrorist group Hezbollah. But oddly enough, although I spent countless hours with Jeff and working beside him, I knew very little about these military awards or the commendations until after his passing. He wasn't one to talk much about what he'd been through, even though it impacted him deeply. He simply didn't want to burden others, and he didn't need to brag. He had lived it, he had earned it, he handled himself like a true professional, just as he did throughout life. Jeff's family was what made him most proud, certainly. In 1986, he married Nancy Moyer, and together they raised two sons, Keegan and Brendan, the latter of which followed his father's steps in military service. Jeff was very, very proud of his boys and for the opportunity to raise them in the same small town where he came of age. And although he had a soft spot for his dog, Tucker, yes, it was apparent to everyone that Nancy was the true apple of Jeff's eye. He knew how hardworking she was and how important it was for him to have found a true life partner. He always encouraged Nancy and told her to do what was best for the family, regardless of the outcome. In fact, Nancy's sister Julie recently shared that when Jeff looked at his wife, it was clear that he adored her. He truly loved her. She said, "I could not have wished for a better husband for my sister," which was a true compliment to Jeff. Absolutely. Jeff befriended countless people throughout the years. In fact, one of Jeff's longtime friends, Aaron Fadden, who's here today, he called me the morning after Jeff passed in utter disbelief. I don't know if he remembers what he said. I'll try and give my best Aaron impersonation. He said, "Losing Jeff really hurts." We spoke the same language. He says, "I really liked him. And these days, I don't like very many people." So what Aaron was saying, and what everyone here realizes today, is that you don't just find guys like Jeff Ingalls on the corner store or wandering by the side of the road. They are truly special. In life, there are but perhaps a few people in any of our circles who you could call during your darkest hour on any day, at any time, from any place, and they would be there. And Jeff Ingalls was one of those guys, and now he's gone. We will all miss his infectious smile, the twinkle in his eyes, the friendly wave from behind the wheel of his pickup truck. We'll miss his spirit, his energy, his work ethic, his sense of dependability, compassion, his kindness, morality, honesty, dependability, yes, his love for country, his love for family, his love for God. He was the total package, a gentle giant, proud yet humble, a great listener, a friend you wanted to keep. Jeff was certainly self-critical in the pursuit of excellence. He could laugh at himself, but never would try and garner a chuckle at someone else's misfortune. When he would make a mistake, he'd just turn to me and he'd say, well, I guess I simply got hit in the head one too many times. We'd often share stories about construction initiatives that took far longer than they probably should have or required far too much effort. He was a perfectionist, but his military training required him to keep working on a project until things were done and things were completed properly. And I think his sons could probably attest to that. He wanted to make sure things were done to his standards, and one certainly doesn't develop such a reputation by accident. It's a result of sustained adherence to an inner compass trained upon true north. Although Jeff was in many ways a private person, he never shied away from community affairs. He was active in his local church. He volunteered for the Penny Search and Rescue Team. He groomed trails for the White Mountain Snowmobile Club and had a particular interest in the Woodstock Planning Board. It was refreshing to see someone deeply involved for all the right reasons. He wasn't in it for the drama. He wasn't in it for the political theater. He was involved to offer genuine assistance to the very best of his ability. He simply wanted to serve his fellow man. Many might not realize that Jeff was an advocate for other soldiers and their military families, some of whom had been lost in the system per se, and how he found time to reach out to these people, work with them, is beyond me, but he did. And he even founded a nonprofit support group focused on mental health called Vets Rest Stop, which will continue on in his memory. I'd like to close with just a short story and share some advice Jeff gave to me only a few days before his passing. One morning, last March, he stopped by the railroad offices and we were discussing some upcoming construction projects. And as he was about to leave, I asked him if he could spare just a few minutes. I had just bought a used shotgun, okay? And I asked Jeff if he could take a look at the gun. I was having a few problems, and he said, sure, yes. So he followed me down to my pickup truck, and then on the way down the stairs, I queued up my phone, my smartphone. I pulled it out, and like any savvy guy does these days who wants to solve problems, he goes to YouTube, right? So I pull up a video, right? And here's a guy who comes on the screen. I hand the phone to Jeff. Kind of a sketchy-looking guy, actually. He had a Pink Floyd T-shirt on. It said Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, or something like this. So I give it to Jeff, and I'm pretty proud. I found a YouTube video, Jeff. Yeah, take a look. And he looked at it for a few minutes, and all he said was, And then he handed me back my phone. He said, where's your gun? So I gave him my shotgun, and we're having a little problem. You try and pump the gun, and the ammunition wouldn't elevate. It would fall down on the ground. And he spent a few minutes, and before you know it, he made a small adjustment and handed me back my rifle. And he said, yep, you're all set. You should be good. And I thanked him, and as he walked away, I said, Jeff, I appreciate that. Do you have any other advice for me? Would you recommend anything else? And he stopped and he turned and he kind of smiled, that sort of crooked grin, and he says, yeah. He says, never trust anyone wearing a Pink Floyd T-shirt. And so, I will leave you with those immortal words from Jeff Ingalls. As you go through life, carefully choose those who you would turn to for information, especially with something as dangerous as a firearm. And never, ever trust anyone wearing a Pink Floyd T-shirt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I envisioned Jeff walking back to his truck going, we don't need no education. That's awesome. Legacy. Legacy is what we leave. And the Veterans Rest Stop is what Jeff is leaving behind, and it is beautiful. So Kelly, Philbrick, would you come and speak to the Veterans Rest Stop?
take credit for the flyby that came by early. He was 20 minutes early, but it's here, of course. Sorry. Yeah. One disclosure, I've got some numbers here, and it's been a while since Ken spoke, so I'm hoping you forgot his numbers. If they do conflict, go with his. Okay? Okay. Okay. E9, highest enlisted rank in grade in the U.S. military. Master Chief, Petty Officer, Navy's designation of the E9 position. Supervisory position in charge of training, mentoring, and discipline of those in the section. Command Master Chief, Senior Enlisted Advisor to the unit, Commander. Acts as the liaison between the unit commander and the enlisted force, communicating the commander's goals, direction, while representing the enlisted personnel concerns and welfare. These are all positions that Jeff held. As a perspective, the U.S. population is roughly 330 million people, with approximately 170 million people of an age that could serve in the military. Slightly under 0.75% of the 170 million service-eligible people voluntarily serve into the U.S. military. Of that 0.75%, only 2% will achieve the highly competitive rank of E9, or Master Chief. Further, of that 2%, 1% will be selected to represent the enlisted command position. I only mention this in hopes to share the uniqueness of Jeff's compassion and help for others. Jeff's compassion did not just happen upon entering the Navy. It was in his DNA. This was how he chose to life, representing concerns and welfare of others. Service before self. Retirement opens a new chapter in a serviceman's life, leaving the military life, military family, and brotherhood. Sorry. Some choose their new chapter to begin as a new beginning to change their life story. Not for Jeff. Jeff chose to continue to look out for others, such as him volunteering for the Pemmy Valley Search and Rescue Team, the trails grooming for the White Mountain Snowmobile Club. Jeff's ultimate passion was taking care of service brothers and sisters in need. You can take the man out of the service, but you can't take the service out of the man. Cindy Simmons, who is has been associated with the program since its inception, also works as the board administrator. I asked Cindy a Reader's Digest version of how VRS came to pass. I cannot put her response into words any better than what she wrote. This is Cindy's response. Jeff and I had a mutual friend, a retired Navy captain who committed suicide in 2014. Although I knew Jeff, we hadn't communicated over the years. However, after our friend died, we started talking. Jeff realized the North Country was severely lacking support of fellow veterans. He would attend his weekly counseling meetings, and he would listen to the stories and complaints and the lack of service here. He was transporting veterans to doctor's appointments and even helping one financially. Jeff and I were bringing food to a veteran who was blind and living by himself. Jeff knew there were many vets in the area who needed help, but were unable to get it. After losing our friend, he knew it was time to do something. His dream was to make the Vets Rest Stop a national group. Jeff created the VRS logo. It's here. And I helped him with the paperwork and the trademark. With the trademark to trademark it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in 2016. Jack Daly was Jeff's mentor. Jack helped guide us through the process of creating a nonprofit corporation. Jeff's vision was to ultimately build a community center in Woodstock where veterans could go and meet their counselors, have a coffee, and chat with fellow veterans. Jeff was friends with Alvin Lee, a fellow veteran whom Jeff took many appointments to White River Junction. Alvin eventually was moved to the Grafton County Nursing Home. Jeff was still visiting, would still visit Alvin quite often. They would talk about Jeff's plans with VRS. Part of the conversation was about Alvin's property and thought it would be a great place for not only a community center, but also would provide temporary housing for veterans. It was agreed upon between Alvin and the VRS board, in exchange of the property, VRS would pay off outstanding debts of the property. Through a generous donation of an anonymous donor, VRS was able to pay off any debt on Alvin's property and assumed the property. In pure Master Chief fashion, Jeff's decision to form the VRS was to make a board of directors all-inclusive between the four branches. Jeff himself, Navy; Ken Mack, Marines; Mark Evans, Army; myself, Air Force. Since Jeff's passing, the board is elected to keep Jeff's philosophy. Filling the big man's shoes for the Navy is Norm Belanger. Oops. Sorry. As I indicated earlier, Jack Daly and Cindy Simmons, non-voting members, have contributed to VRS as advisor and administrator. Their contributions have been immeasurable. The synergy within the group, volunteers, contributions from local people and businesses have been astounding. Examples: a sizable financial contribution from an anonymous donor. Corey Schwartz, Sherwin-Williams has donated paint and stain supplies for the community center. Lowe's Home Improvement offering to make donations of building materials. Frank McLean, Habitat of Humanity in Plymouth, is offering valuable advice and contacts with generous contractors. We've also started a unique venture with the Littleton High School's building trade department. We have been in contact with Ben Tilton, the lead instructor of the department. We have challenged the students under Mr. Tilton's supervision with a process of designing and building 1 and 2 bedroom units, which can be built in Littleton High School, then delivered to the VRS site. Students will gain knowledge and experience in a wide variety of skills in the building trades. We have expanded our search for assistance beyond the local area. The nonprofit RCAP Solutions is a resource of community and people who have provided us with free well assessments. Initial reports indicate the existing well is in good shape and possible to be able to support the facility. More information is to follow. Not to make this sound like a sales pitch, but it is. VRS is on our way of making Jeff's dream of creating a safe, chemical-free environment, providing vets an opportunity of getting back on track in actuality. There is national programs available that award vets with an allowance that will be used to help offset the operating costs. In addition, the expectation is for the residents to give back through general facility upkeep. Could be cutting grass, shoveling snow. We basically want to have them have some skin in the game. The community center will be used for gathering place. Library with computers. Those rooms will be set aside for group and individual counseling. Counseling will include therapy, financial budgeting, and resume writing. Fortunately, the location of the property to the town will provide opportunities for the residents to possibly find work and enhance their journey to recovery. Jeff had contacted the VA earlier in the process of establishing the VRS about the possibility of using the facility as an outreach location where counselors could come and support those with transportation difficulties. The VA was excited about the idea and thought they could make it happen. As Jeff often mentioned, and it has become the VRS mantra, offering a vet a hand up, not a handout. VRS is constantly looking for volunteers and contributors. Everyone has something to give. Contributions do not need to be monetary. Working hands during work parties, donating food for volunteers, materials, just getting the word out. You may feel you don't have something to contribute, but you may know someone who does. Make something of this community we'd like to make something of this, make this something the community can be proud of and make a difference in a vet's life. Continue Master Chief Ingalls' legacy, gone but not forgotten. Help make Jeff's dream larger than the man. Master Chief Ingalls, I salute you.
Thank you, Kelly. What a really cool project, and I hope we can all, that our locals, continue to jump in and go down on 175 and see it. Pretty cool. I was approached over here. Another Navy guy would like to say something. Come on up.
Can't let the Marines get
Oh, I think the Marines started something.
I'll pull this down because I'm the shortest guy in the UCTs, I think. First of all, the Marine joke that he pulled there, that was good. I hadn't heard that. But the true definition of a Marine is a CB diver on a light duty chick. So just want to let you know that. First of all, we're talking about Jeff, and Jeff, that table back there that we're all sitting at, there's about 150 years of experience that we served with Jeff. Along with, I know, and there's guys that came from Oregon, California, Atlanta, Florida. Jeff was a character. I heard all these great accolades from Jeff, and he was a mentor. But try not to get emotional. How many years you been married, Nancy? Their wedding was the wedding of all weddings. Okay? I could go on and on and on about that weekend. It was supposed to be a day, and it was a weekend. I nearly got burned up. It was crazy. But I will have to tell you a little story about Jeff Ingalls. Okay, so I was previously married prior to coming into the teams, and I got divorced or going through a separation, and I met my wife that I've been married to for 32 years in Panama City, Florida. Imagine that. Nancy and Jeff were married about 2 years before us, and she's a Georgia Peach, Southern Belle, Southern Baptist, very, never drank a day, and going to marry a Navy diver. So Nancy and Jeff and Joy and Steve Minikevich invited us to Thanksgiving dinner on Jeff's property in Virginia, camping. And my girlfriend at the time says, "Do you have a tent?" I said, "Well, yeah, a 2-man tent." That's good enough, right? Yeah. So we got to have a great meal. I'm going to say something that's going to embarrass Nancy. Well, probably everybody in this room knows about that, but I've told my wife, I said, at the time, girlfriend, I said, we're all, CB divers, we control ourselves, but we do have a reputation. When we party a little hard. So we had our meal, we had our nap, and then there was AK-47 rounds going overhead and MAC-10. It was crazy. And she goes, "What is that noise?" I said, "Just keep your head down." And then they decided Jeff and, a couple names here will come up. I know Steve was there. They decided to cut down some trees after drinking. There's always a Heineken keg. I'm like, this is not a really good idea. So then it gets into the night. We're sitting around the fire, and also, I'm trying to keep, Jana, my wife, she's not sleeping. She's not drinking. We're all drinking, and all we hear is, "Here comes the flying helicopter." Now you can imagine what that is, because Jeff is standing on top of a Chrysler Newport, with his down and doing the flying helicopter, and my soon-to-be wife says, "Does this happen all the time?" I said, but I want to say, we've been talking about Jeff, but Nancy, you are the hero. You really are. I know that Jeff was hard sometimes. He was hard with all of us, but he was a mentor to, Master Chief, that he was a mentor in our whole career. It's an honor to be here. We love you.
All these military jokes. I'm not military, but I got some religious ones. Where's that Southern Baptist, Nancy? How do you get a Baptist to not drink your beer? Invite two. I'm a Baptist. I can do that. But no, he's really hitting on something real, Nancy. You know what does it take to be besides strong? Stronger. So thank you. Extremely strong. And the boys, life's very different. Probably a lot of questions. I was thinking about one for you over there, like, you know, what would Dad be like with my kids? Well, you know, watch him with Tucker. That's what he's going to be like with your kids. Spoil them to death and make excuses for their faults. Wind them up and send them your way. Jeff was very easy on that dog. He wasn't easy on many things, was he, Keegan? But on that dog, he was extremely easy. Go rabbit hunting with Tucker, and Tucker wouldn't do what he was supposed to do. Oh, well, you know, snow is pretty deep. Pretty hard pack out here. We don't have snowshoes on. I think he'd be okay, you know. But I was telling Nancy this earlier, you know. She's done such a good job, and her idea, she thought she needed to be here for all of you. I don't know if you've ever watched her do that or seen her try to do that. I mean, imagine being here for 200 people. You know, we're here for you. You know, they're here because they love Jeff, but they're here because they're going to go on supporting you. So you don't be quiet. Yeah. And it's my challenge to all of you as a minister. I've watched. This is when it begins to get quiet. And quiet, good for a couple days is not so good a week from now, 2 weeks from now. So I give you authority to bug Nancy. And then Nancy, I give you authority to not answer their calls. I don't have reception, Marcus, I swear. Yeah, that tower's coming, though. But, you know, don't let it be quiet. You know, and don't hide. Text messages are good things. The book of Psalms is a really good thing. Really good thing. So let's pursue Nancy and the boys and the girls and everyone, and Priscilla. Pursue them and love on them. If you guys would all stand. All stand. Yes, sir. This is Ray? Hey, Ray. Ray, you an Islander? No, CB? Yes. No. That's all right.
I would just like to mention all that's gone on today. This is a truly American cancer story. A real story. All of this that was run through in our country, you know, this is what our America is.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Priscilla, we love you, Priscilla. They're strong, and then they're stronger. Priscilla, I'm over here. I know, I'm the one that talks to you on Sunday. I'm the preacher. I love you, Priscilla, and I'm going to tell a story about you and what I learned from you. You know, Nancy and Priscilla started to come to church before Jeff. And it took some tough circumstances to get Jeff through the door, but when he was in, he came in full tilt. But Priscilla came first with Nancy. And as a young minister, you know, I got a new lovely lady in our church that's well in years, and I want to take care of her. But we have a few children in our church that get a little rambunctious. And we meet in the community building, and one of the kids had found the dodgeball. They threw that dodgeball over the dividing wall that went from where they were playing to where we were sitting, and it hit Priscilla, who I think at the time was late in her 80s, right in the head. This dodgeball came over the wall, and it hit Priscilla right in the head. And as you can imagine, I was extremely embarrassed and extremely upset. And I walked around that corner to those kids, and I snapped my finger, and I told them where to put that ball, and I told them to sit down. And I walked around to apologize to this young lady that had come to our church, right, that I was really worried about, that got hit in the head with a dodgeball. And I apologized to you, and you grabbed my face and looked me right in the eye, and you go, "Oh, isn't it nice to see young people in church?" That's strong. That's strong, Priscilla. Thank you for being a good example. And thank you for raising the son. I'd like for you guys to make a fist, put it in the air. Like Jeff, many of you have demons. Many of you carry burdens. Many of you have anxiety, worry, fear, and doubt. The Bible says that you were not designed to carry that. That you are not supposed to carry that alone. Not only are you to find brothers and sisters in community, but you are also to find a God who is greater than all your needs. So you think about that anxiety, that fear, that worry, relationship, financial, health, loss of a loved one, upside down world. Now I want you to open your hand. I want you to release that. I want you to leave it here among the celebration of an amazing man, among the laughter and the tears. You're not supposed to carry that. One, we're supposed to do it together, and two, you're supposed to give it to a God that's bigger and greater and promises peace. Do not believe that he's not real. Do not believe that he's not good. That lie has been for a very long time. It's getting pretty old. Because God is good and he is real. God, we thank you. We thank you for Jeff. We thank you for laughter. And we thank you that you are not from a box. That you are not just a lightning bolt holder in the sky waiting to strike us down when we do something wrong. That your loving kindness and passion and forgiveness is everlasting upon everlasting. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this mountain. Thank you for the freedom of this country. Thank you for our state. That we can be outdoors. We love you, God. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much for coming. Please don't feel like you have to run away. There's still more drink and food inside.